The storm came without warning. One moment the sky above the alien world was calm and glowing with twin suns, and the next, thick clouds rolled in like waves of black smoke. Aaron had only just left the landing site when the wind struck. Dust and shards of crystal lifted from the ground, spinning through the air like knives. His suit's visor darkened to shield his eyes, but the roar of the storm drowned out his comms. He tried calling to his team again and again, but no answer came through. The storm swallowed every signal. Aaron cursed under his breath and tightened the strap on his pack. His mission was simple, at least in theory. His group had been sent by Earth's exploration fleet to survey this planet, which they had named Vera. From orbit, it looked like a jewel, covered with forests that shimmered under the sunlight. Up close, it was far more dangerous. Aaron pressed forward, using his scanner to find a path. Every step crunched against glittering ground, where sharp stones sparkled like broken glass. The storm forced him to take cover in a canyon, and as he pushed deeper, he saw shapes ahead. Tall spires of crystal rose from the ground, glowing faintly with inner light. The canyon opened into a wide chamber, and there, the storm calmed as if the place itself was protected. Aaron stopped to catch his breath. He touched his chest pocket, where a small pressed flower rested. He had carried it from Earth as a reminder of home, a simple yellow bloom from a field near his childhood home. It was delicate, something he always kept near, because in the cold emptiness of space, he needed reminders that warmth still existed. He did not expect the ground to shake. The chamber lit brighter as massive doors of crystal slid open ahead of him. Aaron's breath caught in his throat. Figures emerged, tall and armored, their forms half organic and half metal. They carried long staffs that pulsed with energy, and their movements were precise, almost ritualistic. At their center, they formed a path, and from that path, someone far greater appeared. She was taller than the rest, her presence commanding the entire chamber. A crown-like crest of crystal arched above her head, and her robe shimmered with shifting colors. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with menace but with authority. Even without translation, Aaron knew this was their leader. This was the Queen. Aaron froze. His suit carried no weapon that could help him here. He had only a sidearm, barely enough for survival, and using it would be suicide. The guards circled, their staffs raised, ready to strike at the intruder who dared step into their sacred hall. Aaron's mind raced. He had seconds to act, and one wrong move meant death. He remembered his training. First contact was the most fragile moment between species. A gesture of peace could save him, while fear or aggression would doom him. Aaron slowly raised his hands, showing he carried no threat. The guards hesitated but did not lower their weapons. The Queen's gaze locked on him, curious but cold, as if she waited to see what this fragile human would do. Aaron's heart pounded. Words would not work. They did not understand his language, and he had no translator device on him. He needed something universal. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his chest pocket. The guards tensed, weapons crackling, but he moved gently, showing no sign of aggression. From the pocket, he drew the small flower, flattened and fragile, its yellow petals faded but still alive with memory. For a moment, he stared at it himself. The last piece of earth he carried with him, something he never planned to give away. But now, standing before an alien queen who could end his life with a single command, he knew it was the only thing he had to offer. He stepped forward, his boots scraping against the crystal floor. The guards blocked his path, but the queen raised her hand, halting them. Aaron knelt slowly, lowering himself onto one knee. He held the flower carefully, extending it toward her. His head bowed, his hand trembling slightly as the bloom rested on his open palm. The hall fell silent. The storm outside seemed to vanish, leaving only the sound of his own breathing. The queen rose from her throne and stepped forward. Her movements were graceful, her robe whispering across the crystal floor. She stopped before Aaron and looked down at the fragile thing he offered. Her eyes widened slightly, not in anger, but in something else. She reached out, her long fingers tipped with sharp crystalline edges, and lifted the flower from his palm. She studied it with slow precision, as if it were a treasure she had never seen before. The guards murmured in their strange tongue, but none dared move. The queen turned the flower in her hand, watching how its soft petals contrasted against the hard light of her chamber. Aaron kept his head bowed, his chest tight with fear. He did not know if she saw this as a gift or an insult. Then she raised the flower high. The guards lowered their weapons at once. A sound like a low chant filled the hall, echoing against the walls. Aaron looked up and saw the queen gazing at him with a new expression. Not cold, not hostile, but something unreadable. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. She gave a single command, and the guards stepped back. Two of them approached Aaron, not to harm him but to guide him. They lifted him gently to his feet and led him toward the throne. Aaron walked, still confused, still uncertain, but alive. The queen returned to her seat, holding the flower close to her chest. Her eyes never left him. Aaron realized then that his simple act had meant far more to her people than he understood. What he had given was not just a flower. To them, it was a sign, a symbol that carried weight and meaning. Aaron's footsteps echoed across the wide chamber as the guards led him closer to the throne. The crystal floor glimmered under his boots, reflecting light from hidden sources in the walls. Every surface in the hall seemed alive, as though the palace itself breathed with energy. The queen sat tall on her throne, the yellow flower resting in her hand. Her eyes never left him. Aaron tried to stay calm, though his heart raced inside his chest. He wanted to speak, to explain that the flower was only a simple gift from earth, but the words caught in his throat. Even if he spoke, they would not understand him. He felt like a child surrounded by giants. The guards brought him to a stop several paces before the throne. They stepped back, standing like statues, their staffs glowing faintly. The queen leaned forward, studying Aaron as if trying to see through his very skin. She raised the flower once more and spoke in her deep commanding voice. The sound carried across the hall, strong and powerful. Though Aaron could not understand the words, the meaning pressed into him like weight. Her tone was not of anger. It was ritual, something formal, something that mattered to her people. The guards and attendants in the chamber lowered their heads in respect as she spoke. Aaron glanced around, unsure of what to do. His hands trembled slightly. He wanted to show peace again, so he placed one hand on his chest and gave a small bow. It was the best he could think of, a gesture of respect from his culture. A ripple of murmurs spread through the hall. The queen's gaze softened, if only slightly. Moments later, a new figure stepped forward. This one was smaller than the guards, wearing a robe covered with symbols. The alien held a device that glowed faintly with shifting colors. The queen nodded, and the robed figure pressed the device near Aaron. To Aaron's surprise, the device emitted a voice. At first, the sound was broken and unclear, like static. Then slowly, the words shaped into something recognizable. It was crude translation, but enough for meaning to pass through. The queen asks, who you are, and why you bring a living gift, the voice said, halting at times as if struggling to grasp the human tongue. Aaron's throat went dry. He swallowed hard and forced his voice steady. My name is Aaron. I come from Earth. I meant no harm. This flower is a sign of peace. The words were fed back through the device. The alien voice shifted into their language and echoed across the hall. The queen tilted her head, listening with sharp interest. Then she spoke again, her tone rising with authority. The translator responded with new words. The queen says, your gesture is ancient among her people. To give life to the monarch is binding. She declares, you have offered loyalty. She declares, you are chosen. Aaron's eyes widened. His mouth opened, but no words came. Chosen, he repeated in disbelief. The device translated, and again the queen spoke. The reply chilled him. She declares, you are her consort. Aaron froze. His heart pounded so loudly he thought it might echo through the hall. He had meant only to save his life, to offer peace, and now these beings believed he had pledged himself to their queen. The guards around the chamber struck their staffs against the floor in unison, a sound of thunder that filled the room. The people cheered, their voices rising in a chant that carried the queen's name. Aaron tried to explain. No, you do not understand. On my world, it is only a flower. A small thing. It does not mean I wish to marry or rule. But when the words passed through the translator, the robed alien frowned, as though the device struggled to carry the meaning. The queen's expression remained steady. She responded with a firm voice. The queen says, your modesty is honored. But the right cannot be broken. You gave life to her hand. You are bound. Aaron's knees weakened, and he almost stumbled. The flower, that simple reminder of Earth, had placed him in a position he never expected. The queen raised the bloom above her head, and the hall roared with approval. To them, it was no small gift. It was the oldest tradition of their kind. And he had performed it without even knowing. The queen motioned for Aaron to rise fully. Two guards guided him closer to the throne until he stood at her side. He felt small under her presence, the crown of crystal above her head glowing faintly with inner light. She turned her gaze toward him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then she spoke once more, her voice softer yet filled with weight. The queen says, you are not prisoner. You are honored. From this day, you stand beside her. The guards lowered their weapons completely. The robed figure bowed deeply, and the rest of the court followed. Aaron stood there, uncertain if he should bow again or simply remain still. He chose stillness, his breath tight in his chest. As the ceremony ended, attendants approached, offering him a cloak of woven crystal threads. They draped it across his shoulders, heavy but warm. The queen placed the flower into a crystal container and set it upon a pedestal beside her throne. It glowed faintly, as if her world itself fed it with energy to preserve it. Aaron realized then that there was no turning back. His gesture, meant only to save his life, had bound him to a role he did not understand. He wondered what his team would think if they ever found him again. Would they believe him if he told them that a flower made him consort to an alien queen? As the guards led him away to a chamber prepared for him, Aaron looked back one last time. The queen sat tall, her eyes following him, the flower glowing beside her. Her people saw destiny in his gesture. He saw only confusion. Yet deep inside, a spark of curiosity began to grow. Perhaps this mistake would shape not only his future but the bond between two worlds. The palace glowed with the light of morning as Aaron was brought back into the great hall. He had not slept much. The chamber they gave him was grand, decorated with crystal patterns that shifted like stars across the walls, but his mind would not rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the queen holding his flower, raising it high before her people, and declaring him something he never expected. Consort. Now he walked between guards once more, his boots echoing against the polished floor. His stomach twisted with unease. He wished he could speak with his team, wished he could explain what had happened, but his communicator was still silent. He felt more alone than ever, trapped in a place where every gesture carried meaning he did not understand. When he entered the hall, the queen was already waiting on her throne. Around her, the court gathered, filling the chamber with quiet tension. The robed figure who carried the translator device stood beside her. The flower remained in its crystal case on the pedestal, glowing faintly like a star from another world. Aaron was guided to stand before the throne. He kept his head up, though his heart hammered in his chest. The queen leaned forward and spoke in her strong commanding voice. The translator echoed her words in broken human tongue. The queen speaks to her people. She declares that the bond is sealed. The human named Aaron has given life into her hand. He is consort by right. The words rang through the chamber like a hammer. The guards struck their staffs on the ground in rhythm, and the sound filled the air. The crowd answered with cheers and voices chanting the queen's name. Aaron felt his face grow hot. He lifted his hands, trying to calm them, but the noise only grew louder. He turned to the translator and spoke quickly. "This is wrong. I gave a flower as a gift of peace, not as a binding promise. On my world, it is only a symbol of kindness." The device translated, though the words stumbled. The queen listened with calm interest, her eyes sharp. She answered with a tone that carried finality. The queen says, "Your words show humility. To her people, your meaning is greater than your own understanding. You cannot step away from the right. To give life is to join with her." Aaron felt the ground tilt beneath him. He wanted to protest again, but the crowd would not hear it. To them, his hesitation was only modesty, not rejection. He saw faces in the court watching him with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with open doubt. Some whispered to one another, shaking their heads. Not everyone welcomed him. The queen raised her hand, and silence returned to the hall. She stood, tall and commanding, her crystal crown glowing in the morning light. She spoke once more, her voice ringing with authority. The queen declares, the trials will be given. The human will walk the path of consort. If he is worthy, he will stand. If not, he will fall. Aaron's breath caught. Trials. His mind raced with questions, but before he could ask, the guards stepped forward. The crowd erupted again, some with cheers, others with doubt. The queen sat down once more, her eyes steady on him. The translator whispered to him, "Softer now. The trials are ancient. They test courage, wisdom, and spirit. Only one who proves worthy can remain at her side." Aaron closed his eyes for a moment. He had no choice. If he refused, they would see it as dishonor. If he failed, he might not live. He opened his eyes again and nodded. "I will face them." The device echoed his words, and the court stirred with renewed energy. The queen gave the slightest nod, as if she had expected nothing less. Later, Aaron was led from the hall into a vast corridor lined with carvings. The walls told stories of rulers long past. He saw depictions of beings standing beside the queen's ancestors, holding strange objects in their hands. Gifts, perhaps. He wondered if others from beyond the stars had made the same mistake as him. The guards brought him to a chamber where he was given food and water. Alien fruits glowed faintly with inner light, their taste sharp but refreshing. He ate slowly, thinking of the days ahead. His mind drifted back to the flower. To him, it was only a small piece of earth, a memory of home. To them, it was a vow of loyalty. A promise. He sat alone, staring at the walls. His chest tightened with the weight of what had happened. He had not chosen this path, yet it had chosen him. The queen believed his gesture carried destiny, and her people would not allow him to walk away. Hours later, the guards returned. They brought him to a balcony overlooking the alien city. Aaron stepped into the open air and felt the wind on his face. Below, the city stretched wide, towers of crystal rising like mountains, streets glowing with streams of energy. Thousands of beings moved through the avenues, their eyes lifted toward the balcony. The queen stood beside him, tall and regal, the flower still preserved behind her throne. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. Then she spoke, her voice carrying across the city like thunder. The queen declares, a new bond has been made. The human stands as consort by right. He will face the trials. If he proves strong, he will remain. If he fails, he will be forgotten. The crowd roared, filling the air with sound. Aaron gripped the railing, staring at the endless faces below. He felt the weight of their hope, their doubt, their judgment. He knew then that the trials were not only about him and the queen. They were about trust between two worlds. The queen lowered her hand and turned to him. For the first time, her expression softened. Her voice came low, almost gentle, though still filled with strength. The translator whispered, "The queen says, you have much to learn. But she believes you will not break." Aaron met her gaze. He still did not understand her fully, nor the meaning her people placed on his gesture. But he understood this much. He was no longer only a visitor. He was a symbol, whether he wanted it or not. And symbols carried power. As the suns lowered in the sky and the city lights began to shine, Aaron knew the next days would decide everything. The trials awaited him, and with them, the chance to prove his worth or be lost forever. The morning suns rose over the alien city, casting golden and silver light across the crystal towers. Aaron stood in the training grounds of the palace, surrounded by high walls that shimmered with protective energy. The air was heavy with expectation. Guards lined the edges, their staffs planted firmly in the ground. Courtiers and nobles filled the stands above, eager to watch. The queen sat on a raised platform, her eyes fixed on him. Aaron's chest tightened as he looked around. He had no weapon in his hand, no armor besides his light exploration suit. He had been told that the first trial would test courage. That word echoed in his head again and again. Courage. He wondered what it would mean to these people. A gate opened at the far end of the arena. From the shadows stepped a massive beast. Its body was covered in scales that glowed faintly like molten stone, and its forelegs struck the ground with thunder. Its mouth split into jagged fangs, and its eyes burned with a steady red glow. The crowd cheered at the sight of it. Aaron's throat went dry. He had no chance of fighting such a creature in direct combat. His instincts told him to run, but there was nowhere to go. He forced himself to stay still, to breathe, to think. His mind raced. The ground beneath the beast trembled with every step it took closer. Aaron remembered his training. Courage was not about charging into danger without thought. Courage was about standing when fear told you to fall. He raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. The beast lowered its head, snarling, ready to strike. The guards gripped their staffs, prepared to end the trial if he was killed. The queen, however, gave no signal. Her gaze was steady, as though she was testing not the beast, but Aaron himself. As the monster lunged forward, Aaron dropped to the side, rolling across the ground. The creature's jaw snapped where he had stood. Dust and shards of crystal scattered. Aaron scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. He noticed something about the beast's movement. Its eyes glowed brightly when it charged, but dimmed when it paused. Its vision was strong during attack, weak when still. Aaron drew a piece of reflective metal from his pack. It was part of his exploration gear, a broken panel he had kept. He raised it high, catching the sunlight. When the beast turned toward him again, he angled the panel, sending a flash of light into its eyes. The monster roared, staggering back in confusion. The crowd gasped, their cheers rising louder. Aaron did not press the attack. Instead, he lowered himself and held his ground. He breathed deeply, steadying his fear. He was showing the beast he was not prey, but neither was he a reckless hunter. After several tense moments, the monster snorted and backed away. It turned, retreating through the gate from which it came. The arena fell silent. Then the queen stood, raising her hand. The translator's voice carried her words. The queen declares, the human has faced fear. He has not fallen. The first trial is past. The crowd erupted in thunderous sound, their staffs striking the ground in rhythm. Aaron stood frozen, his knees weak, but relief flooded through him. He had survived the first trial. The second trial began at midday. Aaron was led into a chamber deep within the palace. It was a vast hall filled with glowing crystals arranged in patterns across the floor. The air hummed with energy. At the far end stood a locked door, carved with symbols he could not read. A robed attendant explained through the translator. This trial tests wisdom. To pass, the human must open the door using the energy of the crystals. Fail, and the chamber will remain closed forever. Aaron knelt before the crystals, studying them. They pulsed with light, some bright, some dim. He noticed thin lines of energy connecting them, like rivers of light flowing across the floor. He touched one crystal and felt a surge of power. It was like touching lightning. He stepped back and thought carefully. The puzzle reminded him of circuits, of power grids back on Earth. The light needed to flow in the right pattern to unlock the door. If connected wrong, the energy would collapse. Slowly, he began shifting the crystals. Each one was heavy, but he managed with effort. He traced the lines of energy, rearranging the pieces into a continuous flow. Time pressed against him, the hum of the chamber growing louder with every mistake. Sweat ran down his forehead, and his hands trembled. At last, the final connection snapped into place. The floor lit up with a brilliant wave of energy, rushing toward the door. The lock glowed and opened with a low rumble. The crowd watching from the high balcony cheered again. The queen rose once more. The queen declares, the human has found the path. The second trial is past. Aaron let out a long breath. His body ached, but his spirit lifted. He was proving himself, step by step, not through strength, but through wit and determination. As evening approached, he was taken to the third and final trial of the day. This one was different. There was no beast, no puzzle. Instead, he was brought to a chamber where the air was heavy and thick. Gravity pressed down harder than normal, making every movement painful. The third trial, the translator said, is endurance. The human must remain within this chamber until the sun set. He may not rest on the ground. He must remain standing. Aaron clenched his teeth. The force pushed against his body, dragging his limbs down. Every step felt like lifting a mountain. Minutes passed like hours. Sweat poured down his face, his muscles burned, and his knees shook. He thought of Earth, of the fields where he once walked freely. He thought of the flower, of why he carried it. It was not only a memory. It was a promise to himself, a reminder that no matter how far he traveled, he carried the heart of home with him. He straightened his back and forced his legs to lock firm. The suns moved across the sky, casting shifting light into the chamber. The weight pressed harder, his body screamed with pain, but he refused to fall. At last, as the final rays of sun faded, the gravity lessened. The force lifted from him like a great stone removed from his shoulders. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath, but still conscious. The Queen's voice echoed once more. The Queen declares, the human has stood. He did not break. The third trial is past. The crowd cheered with thunderous voices. Aaron closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him, but a spark of pride burning within. He had survived the first day of trials. He had shown them courage, wisdom, and endurance. He had proven, at least for now, that he was more than just a stranger with a flower. As he was carried back to his chamber for rest, he glanced once toward the Queen. She sat tall, the flower glowing beside her. Her eyes followed him, calm and steady, as if she had expected him to succeed all along. Aaron did not know what the next days would bring, but he knew this much. He was no longer only a visitor. He was walking a path that could not be turned back. The city of crystal glowed under the twin moons. From the balcony of his chamber, Aaron could see the light reflecting across the towers like rivers of silver fire. The people below moved through the streets in celebration, chanting the Queen's name. To them, the trials of the day were proof that the human was more than chance. He had shown strength, and they believed he could stand beside their ruler. But not all voices praised him. In the shadows of the palace council hall, a tall figure stood watching the celebrations with cold eyes. His name was Valak, a warlord of the Queen's court, known for his strength in battle and his sharp tongue. He had long sought to claim greater power among the people. To him, Aaron was not a hero. He was a threat. This human is nothing, Valak muttered to his followers, who stood in silence around him. A fragile creature with no true strength. The Queen sees him as chosen, but she is blinded by ritual. If he remains, our people will grow weak. One of his followers spoke. The trials were past, my lord. The people saw it. They believe. Valak's eyes narrowed. He did not defeat the beast with strength. He tricked it with light. He did not solve the crystals with wisdom of our kind. He used the strange thoughts of his world. Even his endurance was only stubbornness. These are not the marks of a true consort. These are tricks of a desperate outsider. The warlord turned toward the council chamber, where the Queen's advisors were gathering. I will not allow this. The Queen must be reminded of her duty. If she will not listen, then I will make the court see the truth. The next morning, Aaron was summoned to the council hall. The chamber was vast, with a round table of crystal where the Queen sat at the highest seat. Around her, nobles and warlords gathered, their robes heavy with symbols of power. Aaron entered with 2 guards at his side. The translator stood ready, the device glowing softly. The queen greeted him with calm dignity. The queen says, "The trials continue soon. But today, the council will speak." Aaron bowed slightly, though he still felt out of place among the towering figures. His eyes moved across the chamber until they locked with Valax. The warlord's stare was sharp and burning, filled with challenge. Valax rose, his voice deep and harsh. The translator repeated his words. The warlord Valax speaks. He questions the worth of the human. The trials mean nothing. They were tricks, not true strength. This consort is unworthy of the queen. The council erupted in murmurs, some nodding in agreement, others frowning at the insult. Aaron clenched his fists, but he held his tongue. He waited for the queen to answer. She lifted her hand, and silence fell. Her eyes locked on Valax, calm but strong. She spoke with measured tone. The queen says, "The trials are sacred. The human passed them. He stands by right." Valax's jaw tightened. He turned toward Aaron directly, his voice booming. "If he is consort, then let him face me. Not beasts, not puzzles, not weight of gravity. Let him face true battle. Then we will see if his strength is real." The chamber stirred again, voices rising. Aaron's chest tightened. He knew he could never match a warlord in combat. His strength was not in muscle but in mind. Yet if he refused, he would lose everything. The queen's people would see him as weak. The queen rose, her robe shimmering. Her voice rang across the chamber. The queen says, "This challenge is dishonor. The human has proven courage. To demand more is greed." But Valax was not silent. He struck his staff against the floor, and the sound echoed like thunder. The people whisper. They see weakness in this union. If he will not face me, then they will not follow him. If the queen protects him, they will doubt her. The words cut deep. Aaron felt the weight of them pressing on him. He saw the eyes of the court, watching, judging, waiting for his answer. Slowly, he stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart pounded. "I will not refuse," he said. The translator carried his words, and the hall grew still. "If a challenge is given, then I will face it. But I will face it in my way. I will not fight with weapons of war, because that is not my strength. I will fight with what I am. If I lose, then I will accept my place as unworthy." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some whispered in disbelief. Others nodded in approval. The queen's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. Valax's lips curved into a thin smile. "So be it," the warlord said. "Tomorrow, in the arena, the truth will be shown." The council ended with heavy tension. Aaron returned to his chamber under guard. His mind raced with fear and doubt. He knew he could not defeat Valax in strength. The warlord was taller, faster, trained for battle since birth. But Aaron remembered the trials. He had not won them through force. He had won them through courage, thought, and will. Perhaps that could save him again. That night, the queen visited him in his chamber. She entered with no guards, only the translator. Aaron rose to his feet in surprise. The queen stood tall, the flower still glowing in the case she carried. She spoke with quiet strength. The queen says, "You are brave to accept. But the warlord is strong, and he will not hold back. If you fall, the people will doubt. Are you ready for this? Aaron looked into her eyes. They were sharp, but not cruel. He saw no pity, only expectation. He drew a long breath. I am ready. I may not fight like your people, but I will not run. The translator carried his words. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she placed the flower case on the table beside him. The bloom still glowed softly, as though alive. The queen says, this gift began the bond. Hold it in your heart. Let it give you strength. Tomorrow, you must show them who you are. Not as warrior, but as human. She turned and left without another word. Aaron sat alone, staring at the flower. The thought of battle twisted his stomach, but her words echoed in his mind. Show them who you are. As the twin moons set, Aaron clenched his fists and made his choice. He would face the warlord, not with strength of arms, but with the strength of his spirit. The morning sun rose over the city of crystal, its towers shining with gold light. The streets were filled with people moving toward the great arena. Drums echoed from the walls, and banners of silver cloth waved in the air. This was no simple gathering. This was a moment the entire people had been waiting for. The human consort was to face the warlord Valak. Inside the arena, the ground was made of stone carved with sacred patterns. The stands rose high above, filled with thousands of voices. They shouted, sang, and pounded their fists on the railings. Some cheered for Aaron. Others roared for Valak. The air shook with their energy. Aaron stood at one side of the arena, his hands trembling slightly. He wore no armor. The queen had given him no weapon. He had refused them, knowing they would only slow him down. He wore simple clothes, his eyes fixed on the far gate. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest. The gate opened, and Valak entered. The warlord was a towering figure, his body wrapped in light armor that gleamed in the sun. His weapon was a staff of crystal, heavy and sharp at both ends. He carried it with ease, as though it weighed nothing. His eyes burned with challenge as he looked at Aaron across the arena. The queen sat high above on the throne of stone. Her expression was calm, but her eyes never left Aaron. The flower rested in a case beside her, glowing faintly. To the people, it was only a symbol. To her, it was more. The horns sounded, and silence fell across the arena. The challenge had begun. Valak moved first. He charged forward, his staff swinging in a blur. Aaron barely stepped aside in time, the wind of the strike brushing his shoulder. The stone cracked where the staff landed. The power behind it was terrifying. Aaron stumbled but kept his footing. The crowd roared. Some cheered for Valak's strength. Others gasped at Aaron's survival. Valak did not stop. He pressed forward, his attacks heavy and fast. Aaron dodged again and again, his breath growing faster. He had no weapon to block the strikes. His only choice was to move, to stay ahead. But each swing came closer than the last. Aaron's mind raced. He remembered his own words. He could not fight like a warrior. He had to fight like a human. He had to think. As Valak swung again, Aaron dropped low, letting the staff whistle over his head. He rolled across the stone and grabbed a piece of broken shard from the ground. It was small, no real weapon, but sharp enough. He stood quickly, holding it ready. His chest heaved with effort. Valak turned, his eyes filled with contempt. You dare face me with a stone, the warlord growled. The translator shouted the words across the arena, and the crowd laughed. But Aaron's eyes were steady. He did not see the shard as a weapon. He saw it as a tool. When Valak came again, Aaron did not try to meet his strength. He moved sideways, quick as he could, and struck the shard against the staff. Sparks of crystal burst into the air. The warlord blinked for only a moment, but it was enough. Aaron leapt back, creating distance. The crowd gasped. He was not fighting to win with force. He was fighting to survive, to show cleverness. Every time Valak struck, Aaron twisted the battle into a puzzle. He made small cuts at the staff, chipped its surface, and forced the warlord to grow angrier. The more Valak pressed, the more wild his strikes became. His strength was great, but his focus slipped with his rage. Aaron saw it and knew this was his chance. He remembered the second trial, the crystals that sang. Light and reflection. He looked at the broken shard in his hand, its surface shining in the sun. Quickly, he raised it and angled it toward Valak's eyes. The light flashed bright. The warlord roared, blinded for a breath. In that instant, Aaron rushed forward, slamming his shoulder into Valak's chest. The warlord stumbled back. It was not enough to defeat him, but it was enough to show that Aaron would not fall easily. The crowd erupted. Cheers rose on both sides. Some shouted the human's name. Others shouted the warlord's. The arena shook with their voices. Valak regained his stance, fury burning in his eyes. He swung again, but this time Aaron did not run. He dropped low, rolling under the strike, and struck the shard against the staff once more. A crack appeared along the crystal shaft. The warlord froze in disbelief. Aaron had no real weapon, yet he was breaking the tool of a seasoned warrior. The people saw it too. Gasps filled the air. Aaron stood, chest heaving, sweat running down his face. He raised the shard high, showing it to the crowd. His voice rang out, carried by the translator. Strength is not only in muscle. It is in heart, in thought, in will. I am human. This is my way. The queen's eyes gleamed as the translator shouted the words. The people listened, their cheers mixing into one great storm. For the first time, many shouted his name with pride. Valak roared in rage and charged. Aaron knew he could not last much longer. But as the warlord lifted his staff, the crack along it spread. With a sound like thunder, the crystal snapped in two. The warlord froze, staring at the broken weapon in his hands. Silence fell across the arena. Aaron stood before him, trembling, barely able to hold the shard, but still standing. The queen rose from her throne, her voice strong. The queen says, the human has proven his strength. Not with the power of arms, but with the courage of spirit. He stands as consort. The arena erupted in thunderous cheer. Some shouted with joy, others with anger, but none could deny what they had seen. Aaron had faced the warlord and endured. Valak dropped the broken staff to the ground. His eyes burned with shame and fury, but he bowed his head. The warlord yields, the translator said. Aaron's knees nearly gave out, but he stood tall, raising the shard once more. The crowd roared his name, and the queen's gaze met his from above. In her eyes, he saw something deeper than pride. He saw trust. The battle was over, but Aaron knew this was not the end. He had won the arena, but shadows still lingered in the council. The warlord had yielded, yet his hatred would not vanish so easily. The morning light spread across the city, casting the crystal towers in soft gold and silver. Aaron stood in the palace gardens, the flower resting in its glowing case nearby. The queen approached him, her steps quiet but firm. Today was the final test. It was no longer about courage, puzzles, or endurance. Today was about leadership, loyalty, and unity. The court gathered in the great hall. Nobles, advisors, and even soldiers filled the space, watching intently. Valak stood among them, his expression unreadable. The queen rose from her throne and spoke in a voice that carried throughout the hall. The queen says, "Today, the human will show his worth not by strength, not by wit, but by heart. The bonds of the people will be tested. He will choose, guide, and unite. Only then can he remain at her side as consort." Aaron swallowed hard. Leadership had never been his strength. On earth, he had followed orders, not given them. Yet the people of this world looked to him now. The queen's eyes met his, calm and steady. She believed he could do this. The first challenge was simple in words but complex in meaning. A dispute had arisen between two regions of the city. Each claimed rights to the newly built aqueduct, a vital source of water. Without a wise decision, tensions could erupt into violence. Aaron stepped forward. He approached the council members from both regions. The translator carried his words to them clearly. "I do not know all your customs," he said. "But I know that water belongs to all. It is not for one side alone. Let us find a solution that serves everyone, not just one group." The council members hesitated. Some whispered to one another. Others frowned, unwilling to yield. Aaron remained calm. He asked questions, listened to their concerns, and repeated their points carefully. Slowly, he proposed a plan, rotating access times, shared maintenance duties, and fair measurement of water flow. The crowd watched in silence as the negotiations unfolded. Tensions were high, but Aaron's voice was steady. By the afternoon, both sides agreed to the plan. The Queen's translator relayed her words. The Queen says, "The human has shown wisdom and fairness. The first measure of unity is passed." Aaron breathed deeply. One challenge was complete, yet he knew the next would test loyalty. The second challenge came unexpectedly. Valak stepped forward, his voice echoing across the hall. "Many will never trust a human," he said. "He is not one of us. How can he stand beside the Queen and lead?" The people murmured. Doubt flickered in their eyes. Aaron faced the warlord calmly. "I may be different," he said through the translator. "I do not know all your ways, but I care for your people. I will not betray them. Loyalty is not only blood or birth. It is action and heart." Valak's eyes narrowed. "Words are easy. Actions prove truth." Aaron nodded. He stepped into the central plaza outside the palace. Citizens were gathered there, waiting. He began to walk among them, listening to their stories. Farmers spoke of crops, merchants spoke of trade, and children spoke of hope for a better day. Aaron absorbed each word, asking questions, making connections. Slowly, he began organizing the people into teams, helping them solve small problems immediately. Water channels were cleared, markets organized, and paths repaired. He guided, not commanded. He listened, not dictated. By evening, the plaza was transformed. The citizens looked at one another with renewed trust, seeing a human who did not demand loyalty but earned it. The Queen observed quietly, the flower glowing softly beside her throne. She spoke through the translator. The Queen says, "The human has shown loyalty not only to her, but to the people. The second measure of unity is passed." Valak's jaw tightened. His doubts were growing, but he did not speak. The final challenge awaited at sunset. It was the most difficult. The queen summoned all leaders of the city to the central hall. A threat from outside had arrived. Scouts reported that a group of raiders from a distant land had entered the outskirts of the city. They were numerous, armed, and dangerous. Panic spread quickly through the crowd. The queen turned to Aaron. The queen says, "Will you guide them? Will you lead the people in defense and protect the city?" Aaron's heart raced. This was not a physical battle he could fight alone. This was strategy, courage, and leadership combined. He nodded. "I will guide them," he said. He quickly organized teams of citizens and soldiers. He assigned scouts to gather information, arranged barriers to protect key locations, and stationed skilled fighters where they could be most effective. He used the knowledge he had of the city's layout, combining it with observation and strategy. When the raiders arrived, they expected chaos. Instead, they found a city prepared, organized, and united. Citizens moved with calm determination, following Aaron's guidance. Soldiers held their positions. Farmers carried supplies to those defending the gates. The city worked as one living system, each person supporting the other. The raiders were caught off guard. The leadership of Aaron, though not of a warrior, proved stronger than raw strength. With careful strategy and quick decisions, the raiders were driven back. The city suffered no losses, and the people celebrated their safety. As night fell, the queen rose. Her voice echoed across the city and the arena. The queen says, "The human has proven courage, wisdom, and loyalty. He has united the people and protected the city. He stands as consort, worthy of honor and trust." The crowd erupted with cheers. Aaron stood beside the queen, exhausted but smiling. He looked at the flower, glowing softly, the symbol that had begun it all. A gift of peace had led to trust, leadership, and unity. Even Valak bowed his head. He had doubted the human, yet he could not deny his strength of heart and mind. Aaron had not defeated him in battle, but he had achieved far more. He had earned the loyalty of the people and the trust of the queen. The queen turned to Aaron and spoke quietly. The queen says, "You have done more than survive. You have become part of this world. Your journey has begun, but your path will shape the future." Aaron smiled. He had started with a simple gesture, a flower. Now he stood as consort, not because of strength alone, but because of courage, wisdom, and heart. He had become more than a visitor. He had become a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of what humanity could achieve.